Wednesday, June 10th, 2020 kicked off a new era for NASCAR. A new change in how NASCAR approaches racism in America, and what a way to kick off that new era with the good old short track race under the lights at Martinsville. Now, obviously heading into this race, news just came out earlier today that NASCAR announced that they are banning the Confederate flag from NASCAR, all races, everything, regarding with NASCAR indefinitely. So more than likely, you cannot bring a Confederate flag to the track. You cannot have a Confederate shirt, or anything that has to do with the Confederate flag is now banned from NASCAR, which is a great thing. It's, to be honest, it's quite overdue. Now, they did have this rule 5 years ago where they recommended that fans don't bring it, but obviously fans didn't listen. So now, as a result of the incident with George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, NASCAR figured, all right, it's time that we really need to do this. And so they decided to ban Confederate flags. And Bubba Wallace, who's been an advocate as of late for Black Lives Matter in the NASCAR community, he took it a step further when he unveiled a Black Lives Matter paint scheme for Martinsville here tonight. Very simple, but very, very cool looking paint scheme. And it brought in a lot of new eyeballs, specifically from the black community. We saw former football players, former black athletes, and even you had LeBron James even retweeting Bubba Wallace and his paint scheme. So you had a lot of eyeballs tuning into this race here tonight. And again, what better place for a new fan to experience NASCAR than short track at Martinsville, specifically with this package, a modified 2018 package, 750 horsepower, big motor, small blade. If you're a NASCAR fan, you already know what that's going to equal to. And it provided a really fun race. So it started off with Ryan Blaney and Eric Almirola on the front row due to a random draw. And it started off pretty normal. You even had Joe Logano also in the mix. But then after the competition caution came out, something very odd happened. We saw Blaney, we saw John Hunter Nemechek, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, who was also up towards the front, Brad Keselowski, Matt Kenseth, Kyle Busch, all these drivers that were up towards the front, well, not Matt Kenseth, but Kyle Busch, Eric Almirola, the drivers that are up towards the front. All of a sudden, after that competition caution came out and he had this long green flag run to the end of stage one, they were nearly getting lapped by the race leader, Joe Logano. I mean, it was the weirdest thing. I mean, specifically with Blaney, he started on the front row, looked like he might have a good car, and then just fell like a rock, nearly getting lapped. Same thing with Keselowski, as well as Hamlin and Kyle Busch. And we're going to talk about Hamlin and Kyle Busch, specifically the entire Joe Gibbs organization, because they had a very off race. But while they're going towards the back, you had drivers like Bubba Wallace, Jimmie Johnson, and Corey LaJoie, who started near the mid-pack or towards the back of the pack, moving towards the front. And then a caution came out with 18 laps to go. And by up to this point, Bubba Wallace was inside the top 10. So the team decided to gamble and take two tires, which put Bubba on the front row next to Corey LaJoie, who stayed out. Now, it looked like this would be like a story, like a Cinderella type moment, having LaJoie an underdog and Bubba Wallace in the story that he's bringing onto his race car. It could be a cool moment. Well, then Clint Bowyer decided to just ruin that right off the bat. Entering turn one, takes it 3 wide underneath Bubba Wallace, sends Bubba Wallace off of the groove, and Bowyer would then challenge for the race lead to stay inside the top 3. Would not get the lead, but like I said, would stay inside the top 3. While LaJoie would fall back, and Logano would retake the lead. Logano go on to win stage number 1 with Bowyer in second, Jimmie Johnson in third, and Bubba Wallace would manage to hold on for a 5th place. Stage 2 began, and stage 2 was very mild. In fact, after stage 1, the whole race was pretty mild. It was just normal race. It wasn't anything exciting or anything out there. It was just a normal Martinsville race. You had comers and goers. And one of those comers that decided to come up to the field and lead majority of stage 2 was Jimmie Johnson. So stage 2 started off with Logano as the race leader, Clint Bowyer in second, Jimmie Johnson third. Well, when the field started to spread out a bit, Johnson started to close in and pass Bowyer for second. And then not too long after, he then closed up on Joe Logano, and Johnson would pass Logano for the race lead. And this was halfway during the stage. So obviously, when Jimmie Johnson, anything good happens to him, you're not wondering, all right, what's going to happen? Well, for stage 2, nothing did happen. He'd take the lead in stage 2, or halfway into stage 2, and Johnson would go on to win his 3rd stage of his career. And I believe the first stage since he won since his second stage win, either at Pocono, either in 2019, I believe. 2019 in the summer of Pocono. So that's how long it has been. So Yeah, very awesome to see Johnson be competitive and taking home the stage win. Now, remember when I said earlier on in the race review how Keselowski and Blaney fell like a rock after the competition caution stage 1? Well, suddenly in stage 3, they came back to life. First, it was Blaney. Blaney came back to life, charging towards the front, and was pressing Logano for the race lead. Because this was also the point in time during the race where Johnson just started to fall off. Don't know what happened between stage 1 or stage 2 and stage 3, but Johnson just fell off like a rock. Not necessarily outside the top 10, but he just was not competitive anymore. We would see throughout the entire race, he'd be up towards the front, working his way. If he started near the back, he'd work his way towards the front, and then all of a sudden, he'd just fall back and stayed back, kept on falling back, could not get higher than, I believe, 4th or 5th place when stage 3 started. Yeah, Blaney up towards the front. Now he's leading. Logano's in 2nd. So now you're probably thinking, all right, Blaney, he's got this in the bag. No. A caution came out during stage 3, and when drivers came onto pit road, Blaney's crew went over the wall too soon, so Blaney had to start towards the back. But don't worry, Blaney fans, he would eventually find his way back towards the front of the field and settle in for a nice top 3 finish. So while Blaney gets his penalty and he has to go to the back, then it sets up this 4-man battle between Joe Logano, Brad Keselowski, who makes his way back towards the front, Chase Elliott, who's a driver that we haven't really talked about, that was not mentioned throughout the entire race, and Martin Truex Jr. Now, Martin Truex Jr. had a bit of issue near the start of the race. He was penalized for driving over the cone as his 4 tires were not below the orange square box on pit road after, I believe, the first competition caution when that came out and drivers came onto pit road. And he had to go on pit road again a little bit later on to rip off some sheet metal near the right front of his car with a little saw thing, which helped him greatly aero-wise. However, Brad Keselowski, who had right front damage and that did not get cut out from the car, that more than less hurt his performance because Keselowski and either Keselowski was up front and then Truex was able to get by Elliott. He was able to then get by Logano and was able to get by Chase Elliott or Brad Keselowski with ease. And that would be the last time anyone would ever contend Martin Truex Jr. for the lead. As Truex would go on to win at Martinsville for the 2nd time, I believe, in his career. I think it goes back to back actually. When we were in the fall of 2019. Truex dominated this race. Now, in a new pack, well, similar 2018 package, he goes back to victory lane once again for his first victory of the season. So now let's take a look at the unofficial results. They're going to be right there to my right. So Martin Truex Jr., he wins. Ryan Blaney, like I said, he was able to get his way back towards the front of the pack to come up with a 2nd place run. It looked like at first, it was starting to look like he might close in on the race leader of Martin Truex Jr., but Truex just had too good of a race car. Will settle in for 2nd place. And actually, Penske, how about this? 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Keselowski rebounds for a nice 3rd place run at Joe Logano in 4th. Chase Elliott in 5th, the highest Hendrick driver in the field. Well, right behind him is another Hendrick driver in Alex Bowman. Bowman was another driver that fell off a bit, but then worked his way towards the front. How about Matt DiBenedetto? Solid for him in 7th place, good run for that number 21 team. And in 8th place, William Byron, another driver, did not talk about it at all, was up towards or back towards near the middle of the pack, worked his way towards the front, finished in the 8th spot. Kurt Busch to come home in 9th, and Jimmie Johnson, who won stage 2. So, I don't know, like something happened with his race car between the ending of stage 2 and the beginning of stage 3, but 10th place run, solid effort for that number 48 team. However, huge shout out to the 43 car. Bubba Wallace put on a show. At least I was very impressed by how good he ran at Martinsville. It is a favorite track of his. He runs really good at the paperclip. He scored 2 Truck Series wins, so he knows how to get the job done at the paperclip, but still, mighty impressive for him and that number 43 team with that Black Lives Matter car. Very cool to see him up towards the front, battling for cars, passing cars. Even at one point, him and Jimmy had a It looked like it was going to be a good battle towards near the finish because they were nose to tail with 3 or 2 laps ago, but Johnson was able to hold on for a top 10 run while Bubba Wallace gets 11th. Good run for the 34 car, Michael McDowell in 14th place, and he would be the final driver on the lead lap. Kevin Harvick. Now, Kevin Harvick and basically the entire Stewart Haas team had issues except for Cole Custer. Harvick, Almirola, and Clinton Boyer, all 3 of them had battery issues. And for Harvick to finish in the 15th spot with battery issues, kind of surprising, but in a good way. We saw near the final long green flag run of that race, Harvick was just slipping back. I believe he started either near the top half dozen, near the top, so 6th or 7th place, and then just continued to fall off. And with battery issues, you knew there was no way he was going to have a shot to contend for position, but managed to hold on for a top 15 run. Gunt Boyer, who also had a pretty good car near the early first two stages of that race, managed to hold on for a top 20 finish in 17th, while Eric Almirola got the worst of it in 33rd. And now let's talk about Joe Gibbs Racing. Kyle Busch, Eric Jones, and Denny Hamlin. Wow. Just wow. Again, we should point out that these drivers had no setups, or the teams they didn't have past experience. They couldn't use 2019 because that was with a completely different package. You had to go back to 2018 even if you want to bring up some stats. So more than likely, every single team came into Martinsville with a blind setup. Some drivers hit it like Truex, but for some reason his teammates did not hit it. Like nowhere near hit it. Kyle Busch was god awful. Kyle Busch was god awful. I mean awful. Not once did he challenge for even the top 10. He just fell off like a rock, and he was not to be seen from ever again that whole entire race. Same thing with Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin, I believe he had a bit of was in scuffles. Same thing with Denny Hamlin. Just did not have the car at all. He even said at one point, I think over the radio, he hopes this thing blows up. That car was that bad. The car was that bad. He was going to finish 24th, 3 laps down, while Eric Jones, who had huge front damage to his car and was even involved in an incident with the 53 car that would bring out a caution, he'd finish 20th, 3 laps down. And finally, Austin Dillon would finish 37th, but he had a really bad day. He already had crush panel issues, really, I think, the first 10 laps of the race, so he was already at a disadvantage, was fighting extreme heat conditions as well as fumes entering his race car. He's a trooper. He tried to grind it out the entire 500 laps, but was not able to do so, and I believe with under 100 laps to go, he had to be pulled from the race car, and the team had to retire from the race. But luckily, Austin is okay. He's just receiving some fluids from heat exhaustion and fumes. But I am quite surprised that in 2020, if you get crush panel damage, all of a sudden, is there really nothing you can do to sort of prevent drivers from getting heat exhaustion and fumes entering into the race car and entering a person's lungs? Is there really no way you can prevent that, or that's just how it is in racing? Because it's been happening almost every single time. I remember Kyle Busch, I think in 2018 at Charlotte, had the same thing. Had crush panel damage, and all of a sudden, he had problems breathing with fumes, stuff like that. Bubba Wallace, while he didn't have any crush panel damage with the heat and everything that was going on and how exhausted he was, he passed out. He fainted during an interview last week in Atlanta. So it's not a game. A lot of people say what NASCAR drivers go through is not athletic or doesn't really matter. I mean, it just goes to show you how tough you have to be to grind out in NASCAR Cup Series racing every week and not be able to have some form of issues with heat or issues with lungs or something like that. You have to be in top condition. So what would I give this race from 7? So what would I give this race on a scale of 1 to 10? I'd give this a 7 out of 10. Even though there was only 13 lead changes, it was still a pretty fun race, not gonna lie. I mean, look, it wasn't amazing, don't get me wrong. It was just a solid race. I really enjoyed the comers and goers. I mean, Blaney, Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and Keselowski then fall to the back. And then you have Bubba, Johnson, and LaJoie go towards the front. Even Michael McDowell also was in this thing. And then stage 2, you had Jimmie Johnson take over. And then you had Penske falling back. And then near the third stage, you had Penske coming forward back again with Logano, Keselowski, and Blaney. And then you had Joe Gibbs and Truex coming back towards the front. And Bubba Wallace, who fell back a bit in stage 2. Now he was working towards the front. I mean, there was just a lot of comers and goers. Matt DiBenedetto. The other Hendrick drivers, Chase Ellen, Alex Bowman, and William Byron, they were there, but just weren't contenders. And then near the end, they started to move towards the front. Roush Fenway fell to the back. Near the end of the race, they moved to the front of the pack, scoring a 12th and 13th place run. So enjoy the comers and goers. That was a really good race, and I think it's a great way to kick off a new era in NASCAR. NASCAR has had a ton of momentum with them finally getting rid of that Confederate flag and banning it from all NASCAR tracks and merch and what have you. And yeah, to all the people that are disappointed, I know there was a NASCAR team owner that said he was going to quit because they're banning Confederate flag. If you have an issue with NASCAR banning the Confederate flag and you say you're not going to watch NASCAR again, I got one word for you. Bye. Because we don't want you here. We don't want you. If you cannot accept something as basic as to make sure that anyone that comes to the track does not feel uncomfortable by getting rid of the Confederate flag, then honestly, we don't care about you. You can buy. You can piss off for all we care. So, but that's another video. This is a race review. I'm saving all my emotions for another video. Hope to post later in the week. So, 7 out of 10 I give this race. It was a solid Martinsville race. Congratulations to Martin Truex Jr. for his first victory of 2020. And yeah, that's it for me. Tell me guys in the comment section down below, what are your thoughts from this race? Did you like it? Did you not? Again, love to hear your guys' thoughts. But until next time, my name is Jet from MDK, and I'll see you guys in the next video.